Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's telephone town hall with Congressman Cliff Bentz. During today's event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, simply press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. And during this call, you can also sign up for the Congressman's newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time. Again, press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to subscribe to our newsletter. And with that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Bentz. Congressman, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much, Dirk, and thank everyone that's on the line for attending this evening here and into the early evening where all you folks are. I'm sure many of you are wondering why we're doing a telephone town hall and not an in-person town hall. So let me share with you my thinking on this. With a telephone town hall, I've only done one before. It was 4 years ago. It was very successful, but I thought I would start out my presence in Congress by doing in-person town halls, and I've done many of them. One of the problems we've had over the last several years, though, is as I've grown more involved, is the proper word for it here in Congress, it became more and more difficult to go to all 20 of my counties. And so with this approach, we can reach literally thousands of people, and we can reach more than one county at a time. Tonight, for example, we're doing 3 counties, and there are other people calling in from around the district online. We can also avoid imposing on local law and county law enforcement. So what we've been having to do, sadly, is have law enforcement folks present. Last year, we actually had to have some people removed from one of the town halls, and this year, with the increased presence, we had more folks from local law enforcement, and that costs them money. And so this way, we don't impose upon their already tight budgets. And then finally, using this kind of an approach, we can engage in a conversation on a question and answer basis without the disruption and borderline abusiveness that was occurring in the first 4 live town halls I conducted 3 months ago. You know, the issues we are facing are complicated, and they're extremely important, and they deserve discussion. And frankly, I don't want my town halls to turn into opportunities for people to protest and platforms for bad behavior, treating the congressman poorly just to try to make your point. In this way, we should be able to, on telephone here, be able to discuss these really, really important issues in a rational and balanced way. So with that said, let me bring everyone up to date on what we're doing. First, before I jump into the reconciliation bill, let me remind everybody that Congressional District 2 is a little less than 70,000 square miles in size, 20 counties, as I mentioned. And also, I'm the only Republican in our congressional delegation of 8 people, 6 Congress members, and 2 senators. This is my 5th year in Congress. I'm happy to be on 2 excellent committees. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, I'm on the Water Subcommittee, and I'm on the Federal Land Subcommittee. And then I was appointed, after 4 years on Judiciary, I moved over to Energy and Commerce, and I'm on the Energy Subcommittee, the Healthcare Subcommittee, and the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittees. The workload when you're on Energy and Commerce is considerable, but I welcome it, and the issues that we're dealing with are extremely interesting, to say the least, and totally relevant. The reconciliation bill is what's been taking up all of our time over the past, or most of it, over the past, 4 months. And the bill is designed to reflect much of what I've been working on from the years I've been here, but we have a brand new asset in the form of President Donald Trump, and I'm very, very happy that what he's trying to do is very similar to what I've been trying to do, and many of those goals are reflected in the reconciliation bill. Now, for those that are not familiar with the reconciliation bill, it's a legislative process that allows Congress to pass certain budget-related legislation with a simple majority in the Senate, which means 51 votes. As you know, there are 53 Republicans in the Senate and 47 Democrats and independents. This bill, of course, can only be used for changes to taxes, to spending, and to debt, including the debt limit. And so you might wonder where the crossover is between policy on the one hand and budget on the other. And there are many efforts by many folks in the past, Democrat and Republican, to expand the reconciliation bill to include policy matters. But years ago, Senator Byrd put into place what's called the Byrd rule or rules. And so you have to go through what's called the Byrd bath to get your material into the bill. And that test is applied by the Senate parliamentarian, who is the ultimate decision maker in how and what gets into this bill. No one has any ability to, well, they can go over and talk to her, but she's extremely competent, and she's been very involved in this process for many years, since I think 2012 is when I think she started. Just a very, very competent person. So what is in this bill? Well, let me just go through briefly the reconciliation bill content. First of all, it delivers the largest tax cut in American history. This means an extra $5,000 in Americans' pocket, with a double-digit percent decrease in their tax bills. Americans earning between $30,000 and $80,000 will pay around 15% less in taxes. The bill includes no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. This makes good on two of President Trump's cornerstone campaign promises and will benefit hardworking Americans where they need it the most, their paychecks. It finishes President Trump's border wall. As a result, 701 miles of primary wall, 900 miles of river barriers, 629 miles of secondary barriers, and 141 miles of vehicle and pedestrian barriers will be constructed, stopping deadly fentanyl from flowing into our communities and securing the border from dangerous illegal immigrant folks. It boosts Border Patrol and ICE agents on front lines. It empowers immigration authorities to carry out their mission by hiring 10,000 new ICE personnel, 5,000 new custom officers, 3,000 new Border Patrol agents, and gives $10,000 bonuses in each of the next 4 years to agents on the front lines. I want to remind everyone that a year and some months ago, during this period of time, there was something like 180,000 people a month coming in across that border into the United States. That's been reduced now down to a few thousand a month, and we want to keep it that way, and that's why this investment is so welcome. It requires able-bodied Americans to work if they receive benefits. With 4.8 million able-bodied adults choosing not to work, this bill puts work requirements in place and supports them, the folks that then should work if they want those benefits, to find dignity through employment. It reverses the spending curse plaguing Washington, D.C. The legislation delivers the largest deficit reduction in nearly 30 years of $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. It provides historic tax relief to Social Security recipients. It slashes taxes on seniors' Social Security benefits. It will give Americans permanent tax relief through the Trump tax cuts. If the bill doesn't pass, Americans beginning next year will see the largest tax increase in history. That's why we're so anxious to pass this bill. This bill finally modernizes air traffic control, fulfilling President Trump's plan to completely overhaul the systems that keep Americans flying safe and efficiently. This will allow President Trump to update our air traffic control systems and act where the Biden administration failed despite repeated warnings. The bill ends the taxpayer-funded Green New Deal. Legislation repeals or phases out every green corporate welfare subsidy in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act. It stops credits from flowing to China and saves taxpayers $500 billion every year, and reverses electric vehicle mandates that let the climate activists set the standards for American energy. It incentivizes Made in America. It rewards companies that build their products in America with lower taxes and allows Americans who buy American-made vehicles to fully deduct their auto loan interest. It's pro-family. The one big, beautiful bill increases the child tax credit and establishes accounts for newborns to start saving and strengthens paid family leave. It protects family farmers. The bill prevents the death tax from hitting 2 million family-owned farms who would otherwise see their exemptions cut in half, and cuts taxes on farmers by over $10 billion. It's a once-in-a-generation chance to revolutionize our nation's defense capabilities and protect the homeland against new threats. It funds the President's Golden Dome, invests in American shipbuilding, and modernizes our military. I might mention that 2 of the radar installations that will help in this Golden Dome effort are located in my district, one in Christmas Valley and one out near the White Horse Ranch in Harney County where I grew up. It unleashes Americans' energy dominance. The legislation increases onshore and offshore oil and gas leases and provides certainty for energy producers, spurs job growth, and makes energy more affordable. And finally, it boosts American mineral development. The bill increases mining of domestic minerals to make America less dependent on foreign adversaries and critical rare earth minerals. So I'm going to stop there. There's much more in the bill. The bill is over 1,100 pages long, but much of it I've worked on. The Energy and Commerce Committee was responsible for about 205 pages of that bill, and then there's also a big chunk of it. It's about 400 pages is the tax portion, and I enjoy a strong background in tax and am familiar with many of the parts of that particular portion of the bill, and of course then the portion that was generated by the Natural Resource Committee I worked on personally also. So I'm very familiar with those parts, and I'm also familiar with the rest because we've been working as a group on this bill for the past 4 months. I want to thank you for bearing with me as I went through what we're doing, and I think I'll stop there. And before I go to the phones, let me thank you for the questions that you've sent in. And as a reminder, if you want to ask me a question, please press *3. With that, Dirk, let's go to the phones.
Yes, sir. Actually, we've got an online question that was submitted by Rebecca, who's got Medicaid on her mind, and she's asking, why are you cutting Medicaid when you promised you would not?
Well, I'm keeping my promise. We are not cutting Medicaid. Medicaid is an indispensable lifeline for our country and for our country's most vulnerable. What we're doing is working on reducing waste, fraud, and abuse, and you'll find that which we're doing fits under those 3 definitions completely. We Republicans want to preserve Medicaid. It's an essential program. We want to defend Medicaid against those who have been ripping it off and taking that money when they have no right to it. We are imposing a work requirement. I think the polling suggests that something over 80% of Republicans support a work requirement, 60% of independents, and somewhere around 47% of Democrats think that if people are going to be receiving these welfare benefits, they need to be working. And there's a series of exemptions for those who can't work, who have children, or are taking care of a loved one who needs to be cared for. There's a laundry list of exemptions. So the number of people who actually will have to work is modest compared to the number of people on the program. And so anyone who comes in and says we're cutting Medicaid is incorrect.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to keep with the Medicaid theme, and we're going to also throw in some SNAP, too. So next up, also sent in via email, Mike is wondering, what would your advice be to people who currently rely on SNAP benefits and Medicaid?
Okay, let me repeat again that both of these programs are essential and will be protected. And what we're trying to do is make sure these programs last for the folks who so desperately need them. Oregon has 733,000 people participating in the SNAP program. And so, of course, we're going to do what needs to be done to make sure people don't go hungry. But if you are able to work, you should be working. It's a travesty, the number of folks that are not working in the United States. And one of the things that many folks don't know is that if you're not actively seeking work, you're not viewed as being unemployed. What a crazy thing. But there's about 21 million people who are not Americans are not actively seeking work, even though they're capable. And so you ask yourself, what in the world? The numbers that are seeking work are a much more modest group. We've had help wanted signs all over the place across my district, and yet there's still all these people that simply aren't choosing to work. So if you are on SNAP and you are working, you're fine. If you're on SNAP and fall into one of the many exemptions, if you're ill or if you're young or if you're pregnant, if you're one of the people for whom these programs were designed, then there's absolutely nothing to worry about. And even if you're not in one of those groups, get a job. Or at least start looking for one. There are many exemptions. So if for some reason you can't work, get one of the exemptions, keep getting your SNAP. And the same is true on the Medicaid side.
Don't forget, if you've got a question you'd like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad, and you can get subscribed to the Congressman's newsletter right here during this event by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. So for clarity, press *3 to ask a question, press *6 to get signed up for the Congressman's newsletter. Next, we got Randy, who's got the price of groceries on his mind. Randy, you are live with Congressman Bentz. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to know when the price of groceries and gas and rent's coming down.
Well, I'm happy to say, thanks for your question, Randy, and I'm happy to say that the price of gas has come down, although it still seems high in Oregon, because Oregon has imposed clean fuel standards that drives up the cost of fuel by somewhere between 50 cents and $1 a gallon. California is even worse. If you go to California, even though the price of the fuel itself has dropped significantly thanks to the president's efforts to free up the availability of all kinds of fuel, the clean energy baggage that's being attached to these to fossil fuel is driving the cost up. And if you look at my history, you'll notice that before I got this job, I was in the Oregon State Senate for a couple of years. I was in the House for 10 years before that, 12 years in total. And 10 of my Senate friends and I left the state to rob the Oregon legislature of a quorum so we could stop cap and trade. And we did. We did stop cap and trade for 2 years, and then Governor Brown decided to institute it administratively. And that's what you're paying the price for at the pump. And so you might want to turn your attention to your state legislators, not the Republicans, but the Democrats, and say, hey, what are you doing to us? Because that clean fuel effort is, in my mind, misguided as to design and imposing upon many of the people who simply can't afford it, those additional costs. On the grocery front, I'll just say that we are doing our best to try to help through the Farm Bill. We're trying to get it passed so that we can help farmers produce food for less. And then through in the housing part of things, I just want to say that I have been meeting, even today, even this morning, with people to discuss housing. And the problem that we have, of course, is interest rates and the fact that during the Biden administration, way too much money was spent driving up inflation and thus driving up interest rates. And so until we get those interest rates down, it's going to be extraordinarily difficult to get more housing. I will say, though, in Oregon, you need to look at, and I've been doing this and discussing this almost every day, every week since I've been here, how in the world to get the state of Oregon to start doing things that are friendly to housing. Because although you'll hear our governor talk at length about housing being super important, why hasn't she been objecting to the rent control that's being imposed in Portland? If you want to drive every investor away, put controls on rent. The way that you get more housing is you don't control rent because then investors won't show up. You get more housing by doing what Idaho's doing, and that is allowing the free market to work, and suddenly you have more housing you know what to do with. I can't drive to the airport. I live in the eastern edge of Oregon, and I drive over to Boise, and I see literally hundreds of units of housing being built. I look back into Oregon and I see an extraordinarily modest number. But that's the long answer, and I'm just saying that Oregon needs to do a far better job on all three fronts.
So next up, we've got Scott in Grants Pass. Who's got the energy dominance topic on his mind. Scott, you are live with Congressman Bentz. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yeah, how is this going to increase our energy dominance? when the majority of the oil that is pumped in the United States is shipped overseas?
You may have noticed the price of gas and oil has been dropping over the past couple of months, notwithstanding the fact that we export a considerable quantity of it. But the oil and gas markets are international in scope, and so if you restrict exports, what ends up happening is the big oil companies and others quit producing as much, and as a result, the price goes up because the supply goes down. So the president's approach has been to throw open the door to more leasing, reduce the amount of regulatory obstacles that are preventing these wells from being drilled, and also in this bill, actually it's in the part on natural resources that I helped construct. There is a reduction in the royalty being paid by the oil and gas companies as they drill back to what was normal 4 years ago. And so each of these things are designed to try to make producing the fuel less expensive, and thus the price lower for those who are trying to buy it. I just want to say again, the natural gas and the oil markets are national in scale, and trying to build a wall around the United States to prevent that from flowing out is not going to work. I'll also mention that when Biden imposed those restrictions on the export of natural gas, and he was doing it for climate purposes. And what ended up happening then is it basically drove up the price that Putin was getting for his fuel and funding the war in Ukraine. I mean, you've got to be extremely careful in how you approach those kinds of issues. And I just want to say that the producing of our fuel has never been more supported by our president, or any president for that matter, and the Congress, at least the Republicans.
So our next caller with a question, we've got George in Medford joining us. And George wondering about the reconciliation and its impacts. Hello, George. You're live on the call. Go ahead with your question, sir.
Yes, my question is, what kind of impact does this bill have on the wildfire prevention and cleanup efforts? You know, because we live in a very wooded area down here in southwestern Oregon, and you know, we put up a lot of smoke and air pollution and all kinds of stuff coming around wildfire.
George, that's a great question. I'm very, very happy you asked it. The bill contains provisions designed by Chair Bruce Westerman of the Natural Resource Committee, on which I sit. He was the one that asked me to be chair of the Water Subcommittee 4 years ago, ranking member and then chair. And he is a engineer, and then he got his master's degree in forestry, and he's extremely knowledgeable when it comes to the rules and the laws that apply to our forests. And he has designed a portion of the provisions, a number of the provisions that are contained in the BBB, Big Beautiful Bill. And that those provisions provide, among other things, for a 20-year leasing arrangement, so we can get timber companies in for the long haul into our forests. And the idea being that there would be a long-term benefit to them, long enough to try to help manage those forests. I should also mention that since I got here, my focus has been on trying to get back into the woods and trying to figure out ways of supporting our timber industry so that somehow we can reduce the amount of fuel and reduce the amount of smoke. There's been some who have been saying that because of reductions by DOJ and others, that somehow we're not going to have the people to fight the fire. I just want to assure people that the Forest Service reductions have been extremely modest. The long-term plan is to try to reduce the Forest Service by 10 to 15%, but in the short run, a smaller number has actually left. I will tell you that the seasonal workers for fighting fire have not been reduced. And there also was a meeting just a day or so ago between the Secretary Burgum and others to coordinate and make sure that we're ready for the fire season, the upcoming fire season. And to that end, the next time I am in your area, I'll be meeting with fire agencies, including the Forest Service and others, to do as I've done in the past, where I've gone out and met with people in Central Oregon and other places to see if they have everything they need to be ready for the fire season. So the real trick to reducing smoke is to reduce the amount of fuel in our forests. And it's, as you know, the fact that we have not been going into the woods and the fact that we've not been engaged in prescriptive, careful burning has resulted in a mess beyond all belief in the form of our forests. So, again, this bill happens to have some good things in it that would encourage people to come back into the woods, and it has some changes to some of our more challenging barriers to getting into the woods. But at the end of the day, it's going to take far more work. There's just been so many years where so many rules have built up. It seems like a never-ending battle. And once we finally do fight our way into the forest, then we've got to find the money to actually make this work. And we also have to figure out how in the world to get interest rates down so people are enthusiastic about taking logs out of the forest for purposes of building houses. Complex issue, but we're working on it.
We're going to stay in Medford. We've got Jonathan, who wants to discuss rural hospitals. Jonathan, you are live on the call with Congressman Bentz. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I'm a retired physician, and working in the hospital, if somebody gets sick, regardless of ability to pay, they're going to be taken care of. We did see a drop in the number of the uninsured in the past couple of decades, but particularly after Obamacare. But regardless if somebody's working or not, they get sick, they're going to have to be treated, and you're going to see an increase in self-pays, which are no pays, and that may topple the rural facilities. Coos Bay, which is not your district, is in trouble. OHSU's is losing, I think, $8 million a month. It's not in your district, but the rural hospital's on edge as well. So I heard what you said about Medicaid, but I don't agree. Working or not, people still get sick. You can't cut Medicaid. Sorry.
Okay, so I don't plan on cutting Medicaid. And so anybody that says that, doctor, shouldn't say it, because we're not cutting Medicaid. What we're doing is imposing a obligation for those who can work to work. We are going to be removing from the Medicaid rolls those who are not legally on it, such as people here that are undocumented or people who make too much money to be on Medicaid. So we're not cutting anything. And I also point out that in the conversation, I'm on the committee that worked on Medicaid. I'm on the healthcare subcommittee of ENC. And when I'm talking about this, it happens that I do know Dr. Kitzhaber, a former governor, and I reached out to him 4 months ago and said, hey, I'm on this subcommittee. Would you be so kind as to assist me in better understanding how we can best approach Medicaid? And to his credit, he's worked with me as much as I've spoken to him almost once a week over the past 3 months. And he put together a work group for me to correspond with as we tried to figure out how best to approach Medicaid. The ideas he has are excellent, and he put them in place, as you well know, as a doctor, 11, 12 years ago, as he knew that the state of Oregon simply could not afford what its share of Medicaid. And so, as you know, he put a per capita arrangement in and CCOs in place, focused on quality of care. Your question, though, was focused a bit on hospitals. And so what I did is I met with, had my staff reach out to every hospital. I used to be the lawyer for 18 years for our little hospital in Ontario, Oregon. So I know how hospitals work. And I reached out to them. I found out about the provider tax. And many people call it a shell game. It kind of is. But the hospitals, many of the small ones in particular, have become very, very reliant on that particular funding stream, among others. And I made it clear, very clear in the committee, that the provider tax was going to have to be protected. And if it was going to be changed, and it's not going to be changed under this bill, it's going to be frozen in place. So the provider tax, to the extent that it's being used by these hospitals, will remain just as it currently is. I believe Oregon is at 6% in the form of provider tax, and that's where it's going to stay. And I think I can take some credit for saying clearly in the committee meeting, we can't let our rural hospitals lose this device. I should also call out, Doctor, that we included in this bill an increase in doctors' reimbursement because it's no good having a Medicaid system if doctors are not being paid. Otherwise, they're not going to do the work. Why would they? And so we managed to get the increase in for the doctors, and I'm very pleased to be able to report that to you. But I do take a bit of I'm not happy when people start saying you're going to cut Medicaid, because that's not true.
Rather exciting to see so many people have connected into this telephone town hall with Congressman Bentz. Don't forget, he and his staff put out a very informative newsletter, and you can get signed up to receive that right here, right now, during this event by simply pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. You can also ask a question by pressing *3 on your telephone keypad. And next up, we've got Shane in Central Point joining us. Hi, Shane. You are live with the Congressman. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Congressman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Thank you, Shane. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you. Me and my dad were in Washington, D.C., and we had the honor of meeting you and 25 other veterans on our honor flight. And just wanted to thank you for taking the time out that you did to give my dad a flag as a Vietnam vet. And just appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. And that's all I have to say.
Well, I'm happy you said it, Shane. And I have to tell you, the honor flights are one of my greatest honors in going out and shaking hands with people who have put it all on the line for us. I will be, I hope, in Central Point for the Veterans presentation event on Monday, and right now things are kind of up in the air because of this reconciliation process that we're going through. But you're so kind to say thank you, but it's really me who should be saying thank you for your dad's service and all that they put themselves through. I will say that when we meet out there by the World War II Memorial, it always reminds me of my having been there with my dad in 2004 when that memorial was dedicated, and it was so amazing. I think there was 250,000 World War II veterans there on that particular day, and Bob Dole was the one that Congressman Senator Dole was the one that made the main presentation, and it was extraordinarily moving. But anyway, thank you so much for speaking up, and thanks to your dad for his service.
So next, we're heading out to Glendale. We've got Ray coming on the line who's looking for some clarification. Hi, Ray. You're live with Congressman Bentz. Go ahead with your question.
Hello, Congressman. This is Ray Bennett. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm a truck driver. I'm 63, and I'm not ready to pull the plug on Social Security, but man, sometimes those days the trucking industry really beats you up. But as far as I've heard, I'm all for the bill and everything else, but as far as clarification on the no tax on Social Security, I mean, I never used it. I mean, what does that all mean? Thanks you for your father's service from one brat to another. My dad served in Korea.
Well, a couple of things. The no tax on, great question, and the no tax on Social Security needs to be qualified a bit because the no tax goes up to $70,000 per individual, $140,000 for a married couple. And what it's doing is it's offsetting the tax by, I think the maximum is $4,000, and the reduced amount of tax. And that what you encounter is there's so many people on Social Security. If you want to break the budget, you would just not tax any Social Security, but we couldn't afford it. And so what they've done is made that a kind of a progressive approach, the theory being that those people that are below the $70,000 amount are better suited to enjoy the benefit of the tax break than those that are taking home more than that, or as I said, $140,000 if you're married. And again, when I was going through this, even though I've spent an enormous amount of time in the tax space, I've learned that if you don't do it full time, you're probably wrong. And so, talk to your accountant and see exactly where this is going to fit. My understanding is that this will apply this year to 2005's tax returns, so it's fairly immediate in its application if you're below those numbers. And and likewise, that no tax on tips applies this year, this tax year. The other benefits and tax reductions kick in next year because many of them don't expire until December 31st of this year. So it's 400 pages of the 1,100-page bill. It's complicated, and I just want to say it's hugely beneficial and it's hugely valuable for our economy as a whole, but it's complicated. But thank you for driving truck. I try to tell people that if it weren't for truckers, we wouldn't have anything anywhere in any place, because without it being delivered, you wouldn't have it. So thanks for driving, and I'm happy to say that we've been working on the diesel front to try to protect diesel and to try to protect people who know how valuable it is to move our freight. Next question, Dirk.
Yes, sir. Next up, we've got Deborah in Medford on the line with us, and she's got a question about Democrat reasoning. Deborah, welcome. Go ahead and ask your question.
Well, thank you, Congressman, for having me. My question is, we've heard all the things at the top of this call. We heard all of the reasons why we should be voting for this bill or why this bill should be passed. And I'm just wondering, I'm sure your counterparts on the Democratic side are doing the same kind of calls with their people explaining why this bill should not pass. So can you give us an idea of some of the things that they're putting out there on reasons that it shouldn't be passed?
Boy, thanks so much for the question. Yes, thank you so much for the question. The primary thing that you're going to hear from AOC and every one of my fellow congresspeople from Oregon, because they are all Democrats, would be that this is a tax bill for the wealthy, and they will never say a word about all of the people that I mentioned in my remarks. They will simply focus on the fact that those who pay the most tax are also going, which are some of the facts that nobody ever wants to hear, is the fact that the top 1% of Americans pay 40% of the income tax. The top 1% pay 40%. The top 10% pay 72%. And so but I focused on the 60 to 80% that are in the lower tax brackets, and I did so because that's super important to those people. But the Democrats are going to be saying, well, you shouldn't be giving tax breaks to anybody over a certain amount of money. I'm not sure what that certain amount is. Who knows? Who they would call wealthy. But I'll just tell you, those wealthy people are paying huge amounts of tax. And a good thing, because we use that money to pay for the programs that we're talking about tonight, Medicaid and SNAP and the military and everything else. To the extent that they get a tax break, the studies indicate that much of what they don't pay in tax, they invest back in business. And so, but what you would hear, to answer your question, is that all the money in this great big beautiful bill is somehow going to the wealthy. That is not true. And so but that's one thing that you'd hear 80% of the time. There are other things you will hear the phrase over and over again. You're cutting this, you're cutting that. We are not. We are trying to do our best to make sure that the people who benefit from these extremely important and essential programs, and by that I mean Medicaid and SNAP, are able to continue to benefit from them, because those programs are extremely important. They've been around since 1965 because we need them. And the question is, how in the world do we make sure that we're still providing them? We don't do it by cutting them. What we do is we go in, as we're now doing, and saying, hey, you don't belong on this program, get off it, and go get a job. And if you are on the program and you're able, get a job, because you should be working. Why there's 21 million Americans that just sit around doing nothing and don't even go look for work that are capable of working, able-bodied, within 19 to 55. Those people, this country works because people work, and if they all stop working, this country is going to fold. But anyway, you're going to hear all kinds of things about it's all for the wealthy, and they're cutting all these programs, and I'll just tell you, as I've been saying all night, that's not true.
So take a minute right now and get subscribed to the Congressman's very informative newsletter. You can do that by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Again, the Congressman and his staff put out a very informative newsletter, and you can receive it by pressing *6 during this call. Heading back out to Medford, and Dana's on the line, and she's thinking about property tax increase. Dana, go ahead with your question now. Hello, Dana. I think Dana might have dropped off. A quick note of business here. Whoop.
There now.
Dana, are you still with us?
Yes, I am, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit more on the property tax issue, the 3% rate going up.
I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Property tax for homeowners. It's increasing drastically every year over year, and it's
I know what you're talking about.
Getting so out of hand, and I'm wondering, is there ever going to be a end to where they stop the yearly increase at 3%?
I'm sorry. Now I understand. You're talking about the state tax, and the state property tax goes up. There's a limit on it that was imposed many years ago I forgot which measure it was, Measure 5 or Measure 1. I forgot which one, but it said that the property tax could not go up over a certain amount. That certain amount was, I want to say, 3%. That is a state issue, but for whatever it's worth, one of the reasons that this bill hasn't already been voted on this evening, this great big bill, is that there's been a huge argument over what's called SALT, which is state and local taxes. And certain of my fellow Republicans from New York and California, where the property taxes are really high, have been holding out for a higher deduction on your taxes of state and local taxes. There was a limit put on that deduction of your state and local state tax years ago in 2017 of $10,000. That's very probably going to be increased to a higher number. This is not much satisfaction, I'm sure, to you watching every year your taxes go up by those numbers, but at least it's deductible. It may not help you depending upon your tax situation, but there's not much I can do about it other than say, okay, we're going to help you to deduct it from your overall tax, federal taxes. But that's a state issue. You need to contact your state representative, your state senator, your governor, and say, what the heck? I will tell you that I never saw any Democrat that wanted to keep that lid of 3% in place. They wanted it to be higher. So I'm not sure that you're going to get much relief. The only reason it's stuck at that point is because the people voted for it years ago and put that limitation in place. Forgive me for rattling on, but I've spent much time on the Revenue Committee in the Oregon Legislature, and I'm pretty sure I have what you were asking about right. But again, time to call those state legislators.
All right, next we've got a question submitted online. Jackie Rosen's asking, why did my prescription go up 25% this month? It was $11.98 and $7.50 for 3 years. Now it's $40. What should people do?
So it happened that President Trump came in to talk to we Republicans yesterday morning. We meet every week in a group of the 220 of us, and President Trump came over to talk to us primarily about this bill. But in the course of that conversation, he said, you need to start telling everyone that it's his plan to reduce the cost of drugs by 85%. And the reason he wants to reduce it by 85% is what's called most favored nation status. And if you go to Mexico, you go to Canada, you go to London, you would find that many of the drugs that people pay an awful lot for here in the United States, you can buy for a fraction of the cost in those other countries. There are many reasons for that, and it's a complex space. One of the reasons is that the countries negotiate because they have socialized medicines, so they send in bureaucrats to negotiate with pharma, with the big pharmaceutical companies, and they negotiate very low prices. What President Trump was saying he wanted to do is using the leverage he enjoys because of tariffs is to force those prices of drugs down. And he was going to be doing it by saying if you don't start, I said that wrong, by forcing the price of drugs in foreign countries up. And then if the foreign countries don't want to pay more for these wonderful drugs, then he would simply use tariffs to encourage them, that's the word, to pay more for these extremely valuable drugs that we in America have paid through these higher drug prices to have developed. It's a super interesting concept, and if we can get it done, I'm going to be supporting it. But I have to tell you, talking other countries into paying 4 or 5 times more than they're now paying is going to be a bit of a challenge, and it will certainly put to the test the president's negotiating ability. But to your point about why in the world are those drug prices going up, it's because drug companies and I'm going to say probably they're called PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, are the kind of the entity, the middleman that's between the drug company on the one hand and the pharmacy on the other, and that particular entity, this PBM, pharmacy benefit manager, is driving up those costs, and then those higher costs are being passed on to you. We have a partial fix for that in this great big bill. I didn't read it off, but it's there, and it should have some impact in reducing the cost of drugs. So we understand the problem, and we are doing our best to try to address it. I will tell you that politically it's quite difficult. The big pharmaceutical companies have a mean. The way that they are able to develop these incredible drugs is by spending enormous amounts of money in research and development. And if we aren't paying these high prices, then we won't have as much research and development. We won't have as many fancy new drugs. But one of the ways to get around it would be to make foreign countries pay more so that we can pay less. That's the president's idea. So I'll just stop there. I'll tell you. So before I stop, there's 2 places of relief. One, in our great big bill, we are addressing pharmacy benefit managers, and 2, on the presidential front, it's his goal to drive down substantially the cost of pharmaceuticals. So I'll stop there.
So back to the phones. I've got Christian in Medford on the line with us. Christian, welcome. I see you want to talk about federal powers.
Kind of, sort of, but yes. Thank you, Congressman, for this opportunity to raise some questions and talk to you. So I've been looking, and Oregon has trailed in energy production growth. It ranks 47th in the nation over the last 10 years. And a big part of that is because of the Bonneville Power Administration and its control and stranglehold on the local power grid. And I noticed that DOGE went through and cut 6,000 jobs and then went back and started to rehire some of these people. Has there been any consideration of transferring control or authority of the BPA to Washington and Oregon so the states can have some self-determination, or maybe even privatizing the local power grid so we can get more energy production and more power plants in place?
Yep. So, first of all, the answer is yes. That's the short answer. But it's not. The longer answer is that there's been much talk about it, but the transfer wasn't necessarily to Washington and Oregon. The transfer that's been discussed is there. All kinds of transfers are being discussed. It would take an act of Congress because that's how BPA is a federal agency of sorts. I think your numbers are slightly off. The numbers that I have on BPA is that between 125 and 200, I'm reading this here from the notes, 200 probationary employees received termination notices, and then those people have been, for the most part, rehired and taken back. And then Bonneville lost 194 employees to the first buyout offer, and it was poised to lose another 162. So that would amount to about 400. These people, by the way, that are taking those buyouts are extremely valuable. And we reached out the moment we heard about this, which is 2.5-3 months ago, and said, please stop. The taxpayers are not paying for Bonneville; the ratepayers are. And the question is, how in the world do we make sure that the dams keep operating and that we keep generating power? Because it's extraordinarily important that those dams keep operating. As you probably know, I've made a big part of what I did as I was chair of the Water Committee to try to defend the Snake River dams, to try to defend the Klamath dams, and we were not successful in keeping the Klamath dams, but we still have the Snake River dams. Your point about Bonneville being awfully slow in addressing issues is totally correct. And I've met with John Hairston, the CEO, a number of times and had some pretty direct conversations regarding the points you're making. And I'll just say that you can rest assured that we are working on trying to fix some of the things we see there, particularly, by the way, transmission, because it's so important and they're so far behind. Anyway, I hate to shotgun the answer the way I have, but I believe that BPA needs attention. I've been giving it that attention, and we hope to see some sort of improvement.
So our next question comes from Wanda in Central Point. Miss Wanda, you are live with Congressman Bentz. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, I went into the hospital on the 8th of May, and I was in there for a whole week. I need some help I can't walk. I'm legally blind. My daughter takes care of me, but she doesn't get paid for it. She's disabled. My friend come over at night when she's able to help me, but she isn't getting paid for it. Everybody says I can't get no money to pay people until I get a case manager from Senior Services, but they're so backed up. They say it will be sometime in around the 17th of June before they can even begin anything. Can you help me?
Well, that's what our office is for. If you have a way of writing down our office number, I'll give it to you right now in Medford, because this is exactly what our office is designed to do. So do you have a pencil?
Pen or something to write it down.
So I'll tell you, we have your number. So somebody from my team is going to call you back.
This is my friend Jerry's number. My phone number is 541.
No, Miss Wanda, we don't need to give that out. This is a public forum. So just again, to reiterate what the Congressman said, is one of his staff people will give you a call, Wanda. And for everyone else on this call, you might want to take note of this number for federal casework issues, it's 541-776-4646. Again, federal casework issues, you can direct them to this number of 541-776-4646. So, Congressman, I apologize for stepping there, but I just wanted to make sure that we kept some privacy here. But looking at the clock, sir, we are just about out of time for this telephone town hall. I'm hoping that I could call on you for some parting words of wisdom, please.
Well, parting words for sure. Let me just say to our last caller that she is exactly the person that Medicaid is designed to help, and this is why it's so important that we protect that program from those that aren't in that kind of need. So I just want to point out this: she's exactly the kind of person the Medicaid plans are designed to help, and also the SNAP, if that's indeed what she's using. I just want to thank everybody so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. We'll be doing more of these. I need to be trying to reach more people, and at some point we may go back to our live town halls, but I know that the number of people we've reached tonight dramatically exceeds any number that's ever been at one of my town halls, so this is a really good way of trying to reach out. And then I do want to reiterate, if you have issues involving the federal government, for goodness sakes, reach out to our offices. That's why you're paying us. Also, I just want to leave everybody with the fact that I am optimistic. This bill that we're working on reflects enormous amounts of work. Just to give you a point, on our markup, when we go through the bill and give the Democrats and the other side a chance to speak, our markup on just the Energy and Commerce Committee took 27 hours. We started at 2 in the afternoon and we went around the clock for 27 hours, giving everybody a chance to say everything they wanted to say. This bill is a really, really good bill. It's actually going to help. And I just want you to know that we're working hard for you. And if you have questions, then call our offices. And again, thank you so much for being with us this evening. I look forward to talking again with you sometime in the future. Thanks so much.
Congressman, thank you for sharing your time and insights with us. I'd also like to extend a hearty thanks to everyone that participated in today's telephone town hall with Congressman Bentz. If you'd like to stay up to date on the Congressman's work, you can follow him on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Rep. Bentz. That's at REPBENTZ. If you'd like to subscribe to his e-newsletter at this point in the call, just stay on the line and leave us your name and email address after the tone. Thanks again for sharing your time with us. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a great night. This concludes our call. Goodbye.